Somewhere beneath 2.5 miles of ocean, 2 orange recorders contained every answer, every warning, every system failure, every conversation, every second of the final flight. The problem? Nobody could find them. And every day that passed made finding them less likely. Because before Air France Flight 447 disappeared, it started sending messages. Messages investigators didn't understand. Messages that seemed impossible. Messages that ended in silence. Now the aircraft was gone. 228 people were gone. And the only thing standing between investigators and the truth was the Atlantic Ocean. For days, the search produced nothing. No survivors, no wreckage, no explanation. Just a missing airliner and one growing question. What happened to Flight 447? The aircraft had vanished in one of the most remote regions on Earth. Thousands of square miles of open ocean. No witnesses, no radar coverage, no obvious crash site. And while investigators searched, the ocean was already beginning to erase the evidence. Every hour mattered. Not because investigators were running out of theories, because they were running out of clues. Ocean currents move debris. Wind changes locations. Evidence drifts, disappears, breaks apart. And with every passing day, the truth became harder to recover. Then, finally, a breakthrough. A search aircraft spotted something floating below. At first, it looked insignificant. A small piece of debris, then another, then another. Suddenly, investigators had something they hadn't possessed since the aircraft disappeared. Physical evidence. For the first time since Flight 447 vanished, they were looking at pieces of the airplane itself. And almost immediately, the mystery became stranger, because the debris wasn't telling the story investigators expected. One of the leading theories suggested a catastrophic breakup high above the ocean. A violent mid-air event. Something sudden. Something obvious. But the evidence didn't fit. The damage patterns weren't what investigators expected. The debris field wasn't what investigators expected. Instead of answering questions, the wreckage created new ones. And that terrified investigators. Because if the evidence wasn't supporting their best theories, then what exactly had happened? As additional debris was recovered, another reality became impossible to ignore. The aircraft had experienced a serious problem before it vanished. Something significant. Something that connected directly to those strange automated messages. The same messages sent during the final minutes of the flight. The airplane had tried to tell investigators what was happening. The answer was there, hidden somewhere inside the evidence. But nobody could put the pieces together. Not yet. Meanwhile, families around the world waited. Every morning brought hope. Every evening brought disappointment. Some still believed survivors might be found. Others simply wanted answers. Any answer. Because uncertainty can be its own form of torture. And uncertainty was all anyone had. The search continued. Ships crossed the Atlantic. Military aircraft scanned the ocean. Experts from multiple countries joined the effort. Resources poured into the investigation. Yet the most important evidence remained missing. The wreck itself. And more importantly, the black boxes. Investigators knew exactly what those recorders contained. The cockpit voice recorder, the flight data recorder. Together they held the entire story. Every warning, every pilot input, every system response, every second leading up to the disappearance. If investigators could recover them, the mystery could be solved. If they couldn't, the truth might disappear forever. And then investigators realized something frightening. The black boxes were still transmitting. Somewhere beneath the Atlantic Ocean, the recorders were actively sending locator signals. The answers were out there, right now, at this very moment, hidden beneath the water. The problem was, nobody knew where. Search teams listened. Specialized equipment searched for the signals. Ships scanned vast stretches of ocean. Again and again. Nothing. Then investigators noticed something even worse. The batteries powering the locator beacons were running out. The clock was ticking. Every day the signals became weaker. Every day the chances of finding them decreased. Once the batteries died, the search would become exponentially harder. Investigators weren't just racing the ocean anymore. They were racing time, and time was winning. Days passed, then weeks. The signals disappeared. Just like that, gone. The black boxes were still out there. The answers were still out there, but the easiest way to find them had vanished. And suddenly the investigation entered an entirely new phase, a much darker phase. Because now investigators faced a terrifying possibility. What if they never found them? Think about that. A modern passenger jet, 228 people, one of the largest aviation investigations in history. And there was a very real chance nobody would ever know exactly what happened. The Atlantic Ocean had already taken the airplane. Now it seemed determined to take the answer too. Months passed, searches continued, theories multiplied, experts debated, families waited, and still the ocean remained silent. At times, even experienced investigators began questioning whether the wreck would ever be found. The ocean floor itself had become an enemy. Deep underwater mountains, steep valleys, massive cliffs, terrain so challenging that search teams struggled to map it accurately. The aircraft could be anywhere, hidden inside complete darkness, a place untouched by sunlight, a place almost impossible to search. And then, after months of failure, the search ended, not because the mystery was solved, because investigators had run out of options. The airplane remained missing, the black boxes remained missing, and the truth remained buried beneath the Atlantic. For many people, this is where the story should have ended. A mystery lost to the ocean forever. But it didn't. Years later, a new search effort began, armed with better technology, better data, and a completely different understanding of where to look. For the first time in a very long time, investigators felt hope, not certainty. Hope? Then came the breakthrough. Nearly 2 years after Flight 447 vanished, the ocean finally gave something back. The wreck had been found. After all this time, after all the failures, after all the uncertainty, Flight 447 was no longer missing. But what investigators discovered next was even more important, because resting near the wreckage were the two objects they had spent years chasing. The black boxes, silent, waiting, holding every answer. The Atlantic Ocean had hidden them for nearly 2 years. Now investigators were finally about to hear what happened inside the cockpit during the final minutes of Flight 447. And what those recordings revealed would completely change the investigation. Because in Part 3, the black boxes come home. Investigators finally hear the cockpit audio. The final minutes are reconstructed. And the truth behind Air France Flight 447 turns out to be far different than anyone imagined. The airplane was gone. The passengers were gone. But the answer was finally ready to be heard. Please like and subscribe for the conclusion of this epic true story.